The most effective way to play melodically over a chord progression is to play the notes found within the chords. These chord tones are always going to work, and they're going to allow your melodies and solos to sound totally connected to the underlying harmony. This is what people mean when they talk about playing over the changes or outlining the changes. Now, the easiest way to identify these chord tones around the fretboard is to learn the basic arpeggio shapes. This is the foundation of my course, The Art of Melodic Soloing, where I do a deep dive into chord tone-based soloing and improvisation. But here's the thing, once you get these basic arpeggio shapes under your fingers, you have to be able to connect them together over chord progressions. This is what turns these basic patterns into musical phrases. So today I'm going to give you a little system to help get you started. So this system is going to use arpeggio shapes to connect chord tones together over chord progressions. And there's a few basic guidelines. All of the chords we're going to be using are 4-note chords, meaning 7th chords. And we're going to use the 3 most common types of 7th chords: major 7, minor 7, and dominant 7. Now the chords we're going to use for this first example are D minor 7, G dominant 7, and C major 7. And each one of these chords is going to last 1 bar, so 4 beats per chord. 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, 4, 3, 2, 3, 4. So now what we're going to do is play lines using just quarter notes. This is going to give us 4 notes from each chord, 1 per beat. So let's take a look at these arpeggios. Now D minor 7 is made up of the notes D, F, A, and C. That's the root, the minor 3rd, the perfect 5th, and the flat 7th. And if we spread that out across all 6 strings in this position around the 3rd to 5th fret, we get this shape, starting with the 5th A, then the flat 7 C, then D, F, A, C, D, F, A. So that's our D minor 7 arpeggio shape in this spot. Now moving on to the next chord, G7, this is made up of G, B, D, and F. The root, major 3rd, perfect 5th, and flat 7th. And again, we can stretch that out across all 6 strings and we get this shape. G, B, D, F, G, B, D, F, and G. And finally, our C major 7 in this spot, this voicing, is made up of the notes C, E, G, and B. The root, major 3rd, perfect 5th, and major 7th. Again, each one of these chords is a different quality, so they have different intervals. Major 7th chord has a major 3rd and a major 7th. Dominant 7th has a major 3rd and a flat 7th. And a minor 7th has the minor 3rd and the minor 7th. So in this position, if we stretch it out across all 6 strings, we start with G, the very lowest note in this position, then B, C, E, G, B, C, E, and G. So now we get these arpeggio shapes which we can play in one spot. There's D minor, G7, and C major 7. So these arpeggio shapes are a roadmap for all of our chord tones that we're going to use for this exercise we're going to do. Now again, we're playing 1 chord per bar, and we're going to play lines using quarter notes. Now to get started, I'm going to start right on the root of my D chord, and I'm just going to go up a D minor 7 arpeggio. So my quarter notes are 1, 2, 3, 4. So there's my measure of D minor 7. Now from here, the trick is to transition seamlessly to notes from the G dominant 7 arpeggio. And what I'm going to do is continue to ascend. I'm moving up through the D minor 7 arpeggio. So I'm going to continue to ascend up now through the G dominant 7th arpeggio until I get to the top of the position, and then I'll start going back down. So here's my D minor 7, and now I'm transitioning to the G7. Right, so there's the 5th, flat 7th, root, that's the top of the position, and then back down to the flat 7 of my G7 chord. And then here, we've done 4 notes, so there's our 4 quarter notes. Now here we're going to transition to our C major 7 sound. So from here, we're going to come down to the 3rd of C major 7, the root, the major 7th, and the 5th. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. So 3 measures, 3 different chords, all outlined using the chord tones, but seamlessly transitioning from one to the next. And what's great about this is, as you start on different notes of the arpeggio, your transition points land in different spots. For instance, if I was to start down here on the 5th and play 1, 2, 3, 4, then I would transition to G7 here, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then transition to C here, 1, 2, 3, 4. Right, so you get these different permutations, different fingerings, and that's really just the start of it, because you can start changing up the directions. For instance, I could go up a D minor 7, then down a G dominant 7, and then up a C major 7. Right? I could do all sorts of different things. I could go right? There's different directions and different twists and turns I can give this thing. And ultimately, it's up to you and your ear to decide how you want to tackle this thing. But it's really a great way to go from just running these basic shapes to turning it into musical lines. Right? You can start getting into some phrases that really make sense musically. So one of the coolest things about all this is that there's all these different positions up the fretboard you can play this stuff, right? We're kind of sticking to right here and just playing out of this one little box. But there's 5 boxes you can stretch this stuff out across the fretboard. So I'm going to introduce a few new chords, and we'll use this as an opportunity to learn another position. So this next chord progression we're going to work on is again going to be a 3-chord progression. This time we're going to start with C major 7 up here, then move to B dominant 7 here, and then finally E minor 7. So again, first things first, we have to identify the chord tones and we have to learn the arpeggio shapes in this position. So C major 7 again is C, E, G, and B. And if we stretch that out across all 6 strings in this position, we can start with B, the major 7, then C, E, G, B, C, E, G, B, C. So there's our arpeggio shape in that position. Now B7 consists of the notes B, D sharp, F sharp, and A. That's the root, major 3rd, perfect 5th, and flat 7th. And again, we can stretch that out across all 6 strings like this. Right, that's the same fingering we use down here for G7. just moved up here for our B7. That's the nice thing about learning these arpeggios and connecting them together in different positions. There's really only 5 shapes, and they start to repeat themselves as you apply them to different chords up and down the neck. Now finally, our E minor 7 is E, G, B, and D. Right, that's the root, minor 3rd, perfect 5th, and flat 7th. And if we play that across all 6 strings, we can start down here with the 5th, then the flat 7, then the root, minor 3rd, 5th, flat 7, root, minor 3rd, 5th, flat 7. Now, as I'm going through these arpeggios, one of the great things you can do to help solidify this stuff in your mind is call out the interval numbers as you play through it, like I just did. You can also use this as an opportunity to call out the note names, so you can learn your note names all across the fretboard. So that's the first step. That's ground zero. There's our blueprint, right? We've got C major 7, B dominant 7, and E minor 7. Now we can do our little system, our little exercise where we play quarter note lines starting on one of the arpeggios, one of the chord tones of one of the arpeggios, and then transition seamlessly to the next 2 chords as they come. So if we start out simple and we start just on the root of the C major and we go 1, 2, 3, 4, then we've got to transition to this B dominant 7. So we can go 1, 2, 3, 4. And then we want to transition to this E minor 7. So we can go 1, 2, 3, 4. So now we have right, which still sounds a little stiff, but it's starting to sound a little bit more like a line. And once we start messing with that phrasing, getting away from the strict kind of quarter note thing, this stuff can really start to become more musical, right? Instead of just, right, we can start adding some different rhythm to it. Right? Or so now what we're going to do is put these 2 chord progressions together. One of the things I like to do when I'm practicing longer chord progressions is actually break them up into smaller bits so you can address different parts of the chord progression. And that's sort of what we've done here, because when we put these 2 chord progressions together, we actually get the changes to a very famous R&B tune. Sounds something like this. So now I'm going to solo over this full chord progression, right? Our C major 7 to B dominant 7 to E minor 7, followed by our D minor 7, G7, C major 7, right? And I'm going to use ideas derived from the system of voice leading and tying together these arpeggios. Everything I'm going to play in this solo is chord tones to these underlying chords. But I'm going to mess around with the phrasing, and I'm going to use chord tones all over the fretboard to tie this stuff together and create a cool solo. Alright guys, so as always, all the tabs and notation to this lesson and the backing track for this lesson will be available over on my Patreon site. The link is down in the description, along with all my other links. All my courses and stuff are down there, so check that out. And hopefully this type of practicing can get you somewhere you're looking to go. This kind of thing has been very helpful and very rewarding for me with trying to tackle outlining more complicated chord changes. So until next time, happy practicing and take care.